Waigi ka kausa, waigi ki whate. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Media Watch. I'm your host, Dr. Sadi. Now, we do the show every month and we try and bring our best guests, all our guests are best guests. The Media Watch show is about looking at what's actually happening around the world. We look at news items, specifically a main headline. We look at selective headlines in terms of major items and in terms of media activity. And then finally, we try and look at Sikh news or news that's happening in India. The programme started in English, and like I said before, we have some fantastic guests, and we are grateful for them giving up their time to come and spend some time with us. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Gurcharan Singh. He has been a Conservative candidate in the last election, which was only a few months ago, and also got a wonderful guest who's been on the show a couple of times before. It's always great to get her away from her keyboard, or I was going to say typewriter, but you don't use typewriters anymore, computer, because she's a great novelist and also a wonderful campaigner in terms of some of the charity work that she does. So without further ado, let me introduce them, and also they'll tell you a little bit about themselves before we delve into the news and deep dive into what's actually happening around the world. Gurcharan Singh, Waigi Khalsa, Waigi Fateh.
Waigi Khalsa, Waigi Fateh.
Tell us a little bit about, you've been campaigning hard. I know you've been a councillor, and I know recently you were in Slough, which is not too far away from where I live, and in terms of being a prospective parliamentary candidate for the Conservative Party. Sadly, you didn't win, but better luck next time.
Yeah, that's right.
In terms of whatever you do or whoever you actually stand with. Tell us a little bit about. You've been doing this for a few years, haven't you?
Yeah,
you're trying to get into politics. Yeah.
I came to this country in 1972. And after a brief instinct in the civil service, I opened my own business, and at the same time I was doing a social work as well as political work as well. So I became a councillor in 1982, then deputy leader of the council, cabinet member, mayor, and all these things.
Do you think these are stepping stones for you to eventually get into a parliamentary role?
You can say so, but at the same time I think you need to know from the grassroots what's going on, rather than being imposed by somebody else from the top.
Why do you think that in this country we don't actually have any Singhs now in Parliament? And although we did have some people who had Sikh heritage before, when you look at Canada, there's loads of Singhs in Parliament there, aren't there? Even I think Punjabi is like number one or number two spoken language, isn't it?
Well, in this country, we have some problem. I think it's a collective failure of the Sikh population as a whole as well.
Not necessarily the parliamentary groups that are not giving you safe seats for you to get through and pass through into Parliament. You don't think that's the situation?
Nobody gives you a safe seat. You have to fight for it. And I certainly did. And obviously there is some tactic, some maneuvering does go on. There's no doubt about this one. That happens in the Labour Party as well as in the Conservative Party. When in 2006 or 7 issue came up in the Labour Party, I was systematically sidelined from the shortlist. In fact, I was asked a question by a Labour man, would you go to the Parliament with turban? I said, yes, of course I will. I think that was a hindrance for me being put on the shortlist.
Not to you, to them?
To me as well, and for them as well. They lost somebody who was articulate. I was, by common consent, I was known as the best councillor in London Borough of Ealing, and I had a lot of things to my credit. And so that in those days we were talking about the BME community becoming active and becoming a member of Parliament. And here I was subject of a discrimination, and they sidelined me completely. They prepared a short list, which they wanted one person to win, another person was somebody who nobody knew about them. So I think, as I said, maneuvering does go on.
But that's politics, isn't it?
That's politics, absolutely. Yeah. But at the same time,
I'm not saying that's an excuse.
Yeah. At the same time, if you want a best person in the House of Commons to represent you, then you must have a best person.
Yeah.
And in that particular case, it was not. And the person who got elected from Southall was basically a hopeless councillor. But I don't want to say his name or anything like that.
Okay, let's not go there.
Allegedly.
I'm sure they got strengths in their own way, and they do what they can. But ultimately, it's difficult, isn't it? It's difficult to get in. You've got to work hard.
It's a hard work. It's a hard work, and you need to look after people. And currently, or recently, I was a parliamentary candidate in Slough, Conservative parliamentary candidate, and I'm grateful to the party to give me that seat, which I fought anyway, tooth and nail. and now I'm running my own business in Southall. Absolutely fine.
Good luck with that. So it's good that you've come on the show. You can share
My
with
pleasure.
us all your kind of insights into what we can do, especially with some of the stories that are affecting us this week. Simranjit, great to see you again. I think third time possibly on the show, and we did a 1984 special as well. Tell us a little bit about. I mean, you've got a new book, another new book.
We're releasing Saffron Salvation. It was released a few weeks back as an ebook through a bit of the Punjab press. And it's basically a novel that's based on 1984. And I think it will hopefully appeal to a new generation who may not have any idea of what actually happened to people. So I've been busy trying to finish that off, and I've been busy with my NGO work through Dara and Gurbani Therapy. We've been spending about 12 years helping widows in the affected areas of Gurdaspur, Tarn and Amritsar. We wanted to go towards the Malwa region, but we haven't been able to expand. So providing medical aid for victims of torture and victims who were criminalized by the community as terrorists. Entire families, whether if one member had become a part of the Kharku movement, supposedly under Indian intelligence, or they were known as a terrorist, unfortunately the entire family was criminalized and the entire families were tortured.
And the thing is that it kind of continues,
we're trying to help those families, survivors of that genocide period.
And that's an interesting, it kind of continues, doesn't it? That pain continues, doesn't it, from generation on generation, especially if they've lost someone, they've lost their husband, or they've lost their, their wife, or people have disappeared in their families. That ripple effect continues in their lives. It continues,
and unfortunately the community, the Sikh community, as we were analysing a few minutes earlier, it could not bring itself together. It tried, it was very emotional. What you actually need is a very non-emotional reaction. The government of India had a duty, actually, once that civil war ended in 1994, to open up a humanitarian route into the region. That was their responsibility as a country, and they've not fulfilled that in 30 years. So then you get, little groups of volunteers trying to go. They can be criminalized easily. They can be accused of this, that, and the other. And that was, I raised that last year in this United Nations Women conference in India, because India is right now wanting to become a leader with respect to widows for the whole of South Asia. And we raised this in Vrindavan through one of our sister groups who's helped widows as well. Dr. Mohini Giri, she does fantastic work for the last 40 years. Right. She's actually an ex-Indian president's daughter-in-law. So she just, even into her 80s, she's been so active.
And it's inspiring to see these people.
If you're going to kill people, if there's going to be a war, the actual diligence and due diligence on Chaudhary, and they should have created a humanitarian route. They did not create it.
Right.
And then the Sikh community itself has created many layers, many Machiavellian types coming in, creating their own little businesses and making money off the back of widows. So the state of the widows to this day is dire across this whole region.
Right. Okay, well, that's really great, the work that you do, and it's so good to have you here. Now, let's talk about, let's get into the first story, first of all. Literally hot off the press. Sadly, we can report that after last night. Now, if you know about Calais, there's a camp outside. I was quite surprised to hear there's been there for about 20 years. Just on the way in, I was listening to the radio, and someone said to me, came up and said, Ashley, do you not think that this is a result of politics around the world where there's been wars, especially if you look at African locations where people have actually wanted to leave their dire situation that they're in to try and get to France, to try and find a better life. Maybe they'll come to the UK, or if they can live in France or whatever. The point is they're crossing over oceans and seas and dying, and people that are making money are the people that charge. I think last night when I saw a documentary, it was like £3,500 for one person just to kind of cross over in a dodgy boat, where they may or may not make it. Then they live in these camps, and then we saw the report, 1,500 migrants try to enter the Channel Tunnel, and one person's been killed, sadly. Now, they're saying these incursions are a nightly occurrence that's going on. Sections of the M20 in the UK, And we just found out, actually, I've just been told now that there's actually been 2 people. Actually, I've just got it, just had a notification just now. It's really sad. But people that are wanting to cross the border can't because they're scared and they shut the Euro tunnel down. One of the answers has been wanting to put up a fence. But, you know, people put fences up all over the world. I'd love your view on, do you think a fence is an answer? Or would you think that David Cameron should just get on the phone to the president and say, it's your problem, what are you going to do about it? But it's not his problem, is it? Or is it everyone's problem?
It's going on for so many years, so many years. I think it's a collective problem of the French authorities as well as United Kingdom. The United Kingdom basically fence it off, but at the same time, the humanitarian issue there as well. People are fleeing the country and fleeing the region where they destitute, prostitution and all these things. They are trying to run away from there. I think we as a nation and whole of the world as a community have an issue and to deal with this one. They are leaving a situation there where they can't live.
Do you think they're just leaving it to the UK and France to just take care of and it's not anybody else's problem?
No, I think we are part of EU. It's our collective problem. It's not just France, it's us, German, Dutch, all these things, Italy, they all have a problem and they have to solve it properly.
What can they do?
Well, basically, they can't leave it to at the moment they are living with the Turkish and Channel. We can't do that. It has to be they have to sit down and think how they can deal with it. They need to be dispersed in different parts of the world, in Europe, where they can have a reasonable to seek asylum and they can try to lead a reasonable life. But all of them can't come to United Kingdom.
Okay, so you think it's a global responsibility to take care of it?
Absolutely,
okay.
I believe
that.
But
what about going back to the source? And Simranjit, what do you think going back to where the problems actually come from, in those countries where they're running away? Because their situations are really rough, aren't they, where they live?
I think where some of these people may be economic migrants, that some may be coming out of a conflict zone like Sudan has been in the past. And the problem is, you do need to address those areas because genuine refugees very rarely get out of their original countries. So you do end up with this whole migration of people and the networks that are taking these people. I don't think they're being handled on a global region, global level. They're not being looked at.
I think there's also criminal elements as well. The mafia.
I was going to mention that.
They are charging thousands of pounds to get a family from on dodgy boats onto Calais and all these things.
Yes.
I think it's not just so simple, the solution. So it has the multidimensional.
Because if you look at it from an Italian's perspective, you know, obviously they were trying to migrate themselves into Italy via the back door, and they're going on these dodgy boats, charge exorbitant fees, and they die out there on the ocean. So if they don't bomb those people, unfortunately you're going to kill them, aren't you, if you do that?
And we don't know how many people died in crossing over the ocean either. Yeah. This is the figures we have, is just what you tell me or somebody else tells me. So basically, I think there's more casualties are there, and they need to be looked at. It is very difficult to interfere in anybody else's country, but people from here, people from France, they need to sort out a system where people, before they migrate from there, they are stopped there and see what perhaps camps over there can be established.
But the borders are not clear, are they?
I know,
in some of those countries, they're just going to get in a boat and then just get across.
So this is what I'm saying. So if we have some kind of a camps over there on the other side of the ocean, and these people are properly looked after, and then we see what we can do about them.
Okay.
Rather than smugglers, drug dealers take advantage of these poor, destitute people. I think that's what we need to stop.
Let's move on to another story. So we've also seen that millions of men and women and children around the world are currently victims of human trafficking, related to obviously, you know, what's actually happening is that people have been taken out of one country. Now we've got a map that we can show you. Something like 2/3 of this kind of human trafficking comes from sexual exploitation. That particular, in terms of, you know, you talk about we talk about this dark currency, you know, is $99 billion is what this whole slavery industry actually is. In the 21st century, where we would have thought that slavery wasn't there, we still see it today, right? Now, we even look in our backyard and we look at Rotherham, and there's, you know, sexual exploitation of you know, that's going on there, and those people are being not brought to justice. Is there something wrong with our ability to put effort and energy into stopping this from happening. Why is there not a priority there? Why do you think that we don't put a priority on stopping the slave industry, or even this? What was the situation last weekend in the press about this particular gentleman who happened to be in the House of Lords, who was also doing terrible, dark stuff?
Absolutely.
And now he's resigned. I'm not going to mention his name, but the point is it endemic in our society that there's a dark, dirty element of people who want to exploit men, women, and children?
You see, if you look back only 20, 30, 40 years ago, 70s and 80s, Jimmy Savile.
Yes. But he did it and nobody found out he was doing
exactly.
it.
So these things are happening here in this country, and I blame the liberal culture of this country.
Really? Okay.
Yes, because you see, people just look on the other side. Where was the police? Where were the social services? These people are failing our young generation, or have failed our young generation. So people have been grooming kids, children, girls who are 12, 13, 14 years of age. Recently there was a case in Slough, as you mentioned, Rotherham. There was a case in Slough as well. I think this has been endemic, and more people have a courage coming out. We know what has been going on. We have been sweeping all these things under the carpet. I think we need to be honest with ourselves, and I think police and social services.
But how do we fix this? Do we fix this from the? If you look at children playing, and I think it was interesting last week. I think it was. There was an article in Sunday Times last week which spoke about, if you look at, I know you've been teaching in the past, haven't you? You've done some teaching work, and children that at the age of 5 who have a background where the kids' parents are quite rich, by the time they get to 42, apparently they can be quite better off, but not necessarily more intelligent than somebody who isn't given an opportunity. So it's of the unfair society that we live in, right? So does this mean there's some problem in the education system that we have in this country, that we're not able to teach people the right things, right? I'm not blaming the teachers because they work really hard. I'm saying, is there not enough investment in those kind of educational curriculums to start at a grassroots level to stop this thing from happening?
I think, especially in terms of, if we just touch very briefly on education,
we can't just get the teachers to do everything, by the way.
No.
It starts
In
with the
terms
family
of
as well.
even cyberbullying and exploitation through the net, this is something that's being quite, actively taught in schools. So people should be aware that, your photograph can be taken.
The e-safety part is very important.
It can be photoshopped. You don't need to recognize it. And I think grooming is also something that people are only starting to recognize, because before you would have just said, well, that's somebody with an older boyfriend. So even the 14-year-old teenager wouldn't recognize it. So I think that there's been a recognition. But onto the very dark areas, of sexual exploitation. What worries me is the Sikhs as a community from Guru Nanak Dev Ji's time. Guru Nanak Dev Ji was anti-slavery, and he took a stand against it. And from the Guru's time, the Sikhs seem to now, even though they're in a very relatively settled period, despite a genocide in '84, they're in a relatively settled environment globally, but they don't seem to be consciously aware that they have to take a very social activist role in the anti-slavery movement.
Our principle is to defend the defenseless.
We don't need to defer to police systems or other systems. I was watching a very interesting documentary about the paedophile hunter, and he's a chap who does take the law into his own hands on a great deal, and he literally tries to bait and entrap people who he thinks they're dodgy. And then he hands them over to the police. So the point is, I'm not saying that everybody needs to become...
You're saying that it should be vigilantes?
No, I'm saying that the Sikhs need to be socially active. They cannot afford to defer to a government or to a system or a police system. Your religion is not to look the other way. Your religion is, let's get 10 people together and let's actually try and tackle this in our own area. And if every Sikh was doing this actively around the UK, they would be part of a huge anti-slavery movement.
You see, Sikhs are part of the community. We cannot actually work in isolation. We have to work together with the rest of the community as well. Well, the reason I say is social services. In this country, we have a good social services, and some officers, a lot of officers do very good job at all, and they probably are gatekeepers. So, what we need to do is just basically simply say, oh yes, these things happen. No, these things don't happen. We must condemn them in harshest possible way and we must do whatever we can do it. We cannot allow our younger children be exploited, sexually exploited by the older or any generation, by anybody. So whatever needs to be done should be done. It's simple as that, because we can't condone in Sikhism, as mentioned. It's basically, we believe in equality, freedom of speech, and all these things. And my main fear is in 1984 when in Delhi the genocide took place, and I'm concerned about the kids of that. There's a one colony called the Widows Colony, and I'm concerned about their children. Has anybody looked after them? I don't believe so. So I think so. This is a global situation here. There's a lot of drug dealers, a lot of mafias, but I'm also concerned about this situation in this country, where now we are finding so many well-established, well-regarded people, like commentators, like House of Lords, or like some MPs as well, found out.
Yes.
So what is going on with this
society? It means that no one is setting a good example for life, are they, really?
So that's what I think.
So I do think your point's very interesting about, the fact that, Sikhs themselves should be to the forefront
Sikh psyche,
of
I mean, obviously we do have to protect ourselves, and just like Gurcharan Singh has been a pioneer in terms of trying to get the turban Sikh as an MP into Parliament. But the fact is, we can't just look out for ourselves. We are a global religion, and our gurus, if they wanted to look out for themselves, they would have looked out for themselves. Nobody would have suffered torture or imprisonment or anything. They would have had a very nice life, and we would be having 10 very different prophets. But in actual fact, we had a very different religion, and it's an activist religion.
Absolutely. Now, sadly, we've only got just a few minutes left, that's sadly, but also we had to report that the Indian Express talks about the fact that literally a couple of days ago, we saw the attacks over in India. Now, they were using things like night vision cameras, some of these terrorists, right? Also, the media handling of this was really weird as well, in terms of incorrect information coming forward and whatever. I don't really want to address that point. I just wanted to talk about the fact that technology-wise, some of these people are getting really sophisticated in terms of what they're doing. Being able to go into these places and and that's a real worrying sign for us. That we find that these terrorists are getting more and more technology savvy.
When we have a government say, let's cut here, let's cut there, let's cut there. Criminals have drug money. I keep saying drug money because that is the case.
Yes.
And so they have a hands on their best equipment they have. So we have international border here. And as press tells us, allegedly, that people crossed over from the other side into India. So why can't we mind that fence? Why can't put some, like Israel has done it, they have put a fence and the electric current into this one, nobody can cross over from.
But fences sometimes are not the answer, are they?
It's not the answer, but it's definitely a deterrent. Criminal will only stop doing criminal activities if they fear. And there's no fear. People can come in, shoot you, me, or anybody else. And now 3 policemen, one of them SP, and other 3 or 4 civilians, they've been shot. And that is the responsibility of the national government. Should have proper fencing, should have properly manned. Apparently they are saying there was an intelligence report. If that was an intelligence report, why didn't they stop the people at the fence?
Right, absolutely. We got very little time left, actually, because time just flies on this show, which is a good thing. Also great for our viewers as well. Hopefully they're enjoying it in terms of the debate. One more thing I wanted to point out. You had another book, because you've got quite a few books, and this was your father's book, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Literally got a few seconds just to mention it.
Oh, that's very kind of you. My father, Joginder Singh Sandhu, he was sort of pioneer in terms of the Sikh movement in the UK for the community. So he wrote a lovely poetry book, Rahmati Chalak, and so I'm going to try and promote that.
Fantastic.
But again, Saffron Salvation, people can find it on Amazon.
Brilliant, that's really good. So, wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for coming in and taking part in the Media Watch show. Obviously, we try and do it every month now, and we look forward to seeing you in a future show. We've been talking about a lot of things today. They seem to be revolving around the fact that personally we should take responsibility, but these are global issues as well. And hopefully if United Nations, European Union step up to the mark, take these issues seriously, rather than saying it's your problem because it's across your border, or it's your problem because it's a terrorist issue. These are global problems that we all need to take responsibility. So that's it for this week. Well, thanks very much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you next time. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.